Hello everyone, it is Joe here from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. If you're looking for PTCG live codes, make sure you check out the Poketown store. You can get a 5% discount on your orders using that code OmniPoke. For today's video, we are going to be looking at Miraidon Regieleki. This is one of the most aggressive builds that I've seen from the deck, and it was the list that got top 8 at the EUIC in the hands of Rob Kimbram. We're just making one or two changes, I think. Yeah, just one change where we are cutting a Switch Cart for a Drapion V, because I think respecting Mew with this deck definitely makes a good amount of sense, because I really don't see much of a win condition without that inclusion. But Rob's constructed a really nice way of being very aggressive with this deck, so we are going to be showcasing it today. The entire build around is thanks to our Electric Generator item card, which allows us to look at the top 5 cards of the deck and attach 2 basic lightning energy you find to your benched lightning Pokemon in any way that you like, then shuffle the other cards back into the deck. Very amazing means of accelerating our energy. Of course, it's not guaranteed, so we are going to try and thin the deck with this tandem unit ability from Miraidon. It pulls 2 basic lightning Pokemon from the deck directly onto the bench, and we can use one Miraidon to find another, which means we can thin essentially 5 Pokemon out the deck pretty much straight away from tandem units alone, which allows us to get Raikou and Regieleki V into the mix. These are both actually really good attackers and have additional benefits. So the fleet-footed ability is a great way just for allowing us to see more cards in the opening stages, and Lightning Rondo definitely is a decent damaging attack option, especially when you consider that we have Regieleki VMAX that can also buff this damage output further, and this has a 1 less attack cost than the Miraidon, so it can put less pressure on our generators, which is really important. I should mention that Miraidon does have a Photon Blaster attack that deals 220 base, and both of these can be buffed quite happily with your Regieleki VMAX, which has the Transistor ability, increasing basic lightning Pokemon's attacks by 30 more damage. This Pokemon also has a nice free retreat cost inherently in the deck, which is also pretty helpful. And again, this ability stacks, so we can try and get a couple of these into play. Suddenly Miraidon's knocking out V-Stars. Raikou as well is much more dangerous. It essentially becomes like a Palkia V-Star at that stage, with the help of some Regieleki. But the regular V can also put a shift in. With this Lightning Wall attack, the second one, it's actually really helpful. You can deal 100 damage and reduce 100 coming back into you next turn. So it acts like a mini Goodra, essentially, which is really helpful against some Lost Zone box players, just undoing early pressure from crams and such. This is a go-to option. Also, it's pretty good against Gardevoir to use this in the opening stages, just to make them filter out even more Psych Energy to get any relevant damage onto the board, which can be a way for us to get a little bit ahead in the prize race, which is nice. Switching Bolt can be that sort of panic option as well. That 30 damage isn't very much, but it can set things into range, or if we have enough Regieleki VMAX in play, that could still even be poking certain things, and possibly we could go into the active position with our one single prize Pokemon, the Radiant Greninja, which is really nice in the deck just for being a single prize Pokemon in the first place to try and skew that prize trade at times, but also gives us additional draws in the deck. When we play this many energy, why not? Helps us dig towards certain combos. I think the other innovation from Rob was having Cram-o-matic and Echoing Horn. Echoing Horn allows us to be a lot more aggressive with our Serenas and bosses, and the Crams are really just trying to help us filter out item cards which get diminishing returns. We only need 1 Ball Search, essentially, to get Miraidon into the mix, which gets all of our basics out, and then Ultra Balls are still helpful for the VMAX, but they do definitely get much weaker. Also very, very high on our switching cards, because we want to have a healthy number of them so we can have these tempo plays available with Generator, but at the same merits, we don't necessarily need all of these in certain matchups, so they can be fodder for crams, which is really nice to see. Switch cards specifically are very helpful against Lost Zone box, so bear those in mind, and they just add to our switching options, because all of our basics, except Drapion, have a 1 retreat cost, so a really nice, concise way to build the deck so that it just gets into most games, can be threatening, a ton of pressure, a ton of tempo, and it seems to be one of the better ways of building Miraidon. Now, I am still somewhat skeptical with the Cram-o-matics. They haven't been insane for me so far, but they have allowed a couple cool plays here and there, and ultimately they are just giving you better odds of seeing generators alongside the Forest Seal Stones, so I can see why it's in the deck, but I could also see a couple Judge making their way back into the list that are quite helpful against Lost Zone box and Gardevoir more specifically, because Gardy is still one of your trickier matchups. So let me know your thoughts on the list down below, and I'll see you tomorrow for another video. Cheers. So we get to go first in this game. And we have a pretty good start. We have Raikou, always a nice lead because of fleet-footed, and we are getting to go first. Top deck of Miraidon is excellent. Tandem unit is always the mission in the opening stages, and we're looking at a Comfey. And because I don't know what Lost Box it is, I do like attaching just to Regieleki and passing here. Oftentimes Lightning Wall is really, really good. It's actually very strong into pretty much every Lost Zone box deck. It's also very good against Goodra and Giratina to an extent as well. And I'm holding on to the generator because I didn't want to tandem unit out an additional Miraidon. When I've gone first, I can just double dip the same tandem unit and keep my board space in a different way. Especially important because I have Ultra Ball. I could convert this Ultra Ball into possibly Greninja as my final board space, which is kind of nice. Our opponent's getting to the races with a few flower selectings, is going to hit with Cram. Roping into Miraidon's definitely the best option for us because it has the most hit points, so we can actually offset math with good old Switch Cart. You can see there is a scouting the deck to see if Greninja was in there, and that is actually going to end up being our final board space here. Thin it before using the generator. Only need to hit the 1, which we do. I can then turn attach and get a fresh 7 here with that V-Star power still open. We actually get the Switch Cart activation, so now Miraidon is back out of range of Sableye and Cram. And we're going to initiate that prize race with Lightning Wall. Lightning Wall's such an annoying text on it. It's essentially like using a mini Goodra in the opening stages. Now Lost Box play a ton of rope, and they have Sableye to get around it. So this isn't like the be-all and end-all, but definitely for like an early pressure type deal, this is a great way for us to start off the game. And we're going to see just a few more flower selectings. We can see in their Lost Zone and with the Grass Energy in the discard that they are actually playing a Giratina V-Star list, which is much better for us, right? Because they play multi-prizes. The opponent couldn't get anywhere else with their turn, and no need for them to come in to hit us for 10 with Cramorant, so we are able just to simply get a turn attachment into Miraidon so that we can prepare for Giratina if ever it comes into play, because we are holding on to boss, generators, and our V-Star option. So I'm definitely ready for a Giratina if ever it comes into play. As the opponent will now rope, we have the perfect answer at throwing a single prize Pokemon into the active for this escape rope. The opponent has 12 cards in the Lost Zone already, so it looks like they're going to gate for a Lost Mine play here. Ultimately, things to bear in mind, try and put yourself out of range of Switch Carts, of clean Lost Mines or easy like Cram hit into Greninja plays if it's on your Raikou or your Regieleki. These are things to bear in mind, but the high counter Switch Cart definitely makes this matchup pretty reasonable when you also have Lightning Wall at your disposal. I am holding onto a monster hand here, and I possibly could have played a few more cards to play around Roxanne a little bit better here. Maybe I should have at least played one of these generators, just in case I got Roxanne, because I'm going into that range. But right now we're pretty far ahead. I feel like I definitely should have played one of the 2 generators at this stage. But really happy holding on to the remainder of the hand, especially because I still have my V-Star power. So if I do get Roxanne, I still have Forest Seal Stone to fall back on to get myself into a good position. Because it looks like we're essentially just whittling down their Sableye and Cram plays at this stage. They are going to Clara back Sableye and just go for a Lost Mine. Finally taking some prizes by the looks of things on our Miraidon EX. That's taken a couple of hits thanks to the Switch Cart, and they are getting to work on Regieleki V now. But that's absolutely fine, right? It, in theory, has low hit points, but we can Ultra Ball into a V max now, and again, push that even further out of range. Happy enough to get rid of Drap and Beach Courts, because they're going to be playing Beaches too. And it looks like now I'm just going to spend the generators just to really prepare for rocks, because I feel like at this stage I don't lose the game, essentially ever. With so many attackers set up, and I'm still just happy enough to click this Lightning Wall button. We just have way too much hit points on board for them to use any single prize mons. They have to try and weave in the Giratina at some point. They should probably try and weave in Giratina with Roxanne here, but ultimately it doesn't matter too much unless they can also Lost Vacuum our Forest Seal Stone. We should be pretty locked at this stage, as we were literally just able to announce Lightning Wall a bunch of times, essentially. The opponent is going to get Sableye back into the mix by the looks of things. They are going to path Roxanne. which again still doesn't mean anything because we have the Forest Seal Stone. Let's get into the next game. And we have a Ball Search card, which is essentially all we need in the opening stages, and we have Greninja as our lead. Looks like we're up against a Guardi deck with Fog Crystal and Psychics in their opening hand. Our opponent definitely taking their time here with their setup. Remember, this is on ×2 speed as well. So definitely taking their time. Alright, so we have the concealed cards option. Let's see a couple cards. Definitely the debate is whether I should cram here or play the Ultra Ball. I've drawn into so many energy. I think Ultra Ball away cram is probably correct here just to get the tandem unit out and get the lads rolling. The opponent has Klefki, so we want to try and get the tandem unit in first while we can here. Happy enough getting Raikou developed. Lightning Wall is still a really good attack against Guardi. It can at least be a high pressure option. And this is a pretty good 4-card hand to sit on. Once again, the same logic. If I'm going first, I don't mind holding on to generators if it's a matchup where they're not really likely to judge me turn 1. Because I could, in theory, double dip the same tandem unit and -1 card from deck before using generator, and I can get to see which Pokemon comes into the active. Like sometimes I'll throw a Crest in the active and such. So if I was committing the generator, it then, like in theory, could be wasted. In this case, we are just going to generator for 1, get the Switch Cart in. I have no other actions. I couldn't use tandem unit because they did go into Klefki, so it will just be the Lightning Wall here. And we've pretty much established everything we can in this matchup. We don't really have much hand disruption. The only real thing we can try and do in this matchup is try and make an easier prize race for ourselves with the Echoing Horn in the deck. So it's really just going to be us lightning walling as much as possible and trying to power up Raikou and Miraidon in the back at this stage so that I can have KOs on any Zacian I see. We are seeing a Mewtwo piece hit the discard pile. Also a Drifloon in the active. That's not good till next set. But it can be a decent sponge in the opening for them, I suppose. Yeah, I'm going to start cycling some cards here. Evolving into Curlier, getting those refinements done. Don't really see much pressure coming out from this turn, though. And it's just coming back to us. Top deck of Research is pretty nice. It means I can just get that energy drop in. And we will just rip the Research here. There was an opportunity for me to tandem unit one more Pokemon out before this Research. Looks like I'm picking up on it now. Just to get another Regieleki developed. I don't see a reason to not, so I should have probably done that before the Research. We have 5 energy in our hand, though. And I think the only real thing that I want to do is work towards that Echoing Horn. That seems like a really big card for us to hold on to. So we are going to take another prize here. I'm pretty happy that they've already got rid of a Judge last turn. So I'm happy basically holding this generator once again until next turn before Roxanne. It's definitely exciting to try and just rip your generators as quickly as possible, but giving yourself small extra percentages every now and then with these generators is really important. Also, I really like the flexibility of them, right? Sometimes if the opponent keeps a limited bench size, it's better for me to try and go for a Miraidon attack all in one go. Sometimes the Raikou will suffice, so keeping that option to see what the opponent does is always quite nice. There are obviously situations when you have to just rip the generators proactively, but you can sort of take a view based on your board state and what your opponent's deck is. As they're going to finally evolve up into some Gardevoir, have 1 Arcana and 1 EX. They even discard a Roxanne with the Ultra Ball as well. 3 of the Mewtwo pieces currently in the discard pile, and that's the 4th with the Research. So they actually could knock out our Regieleki even with the Lightning Wall if they go for a final burn. The thing is, I have 2 Regieleki developed on the bench, so I could just double evolve up and get a response KO. The issue with me going double Regieleki response KO on the Mewtwo V Union is they could have Sky Seal Stone Zacian and actually win the game on the following turn. And with 4 cards left in deck, that's actually a little bit scary, so I am slightly afraid of this Mewtwo coming out this turn. The good news is I could simply ignore Mewtwo for a turn and just Gust Zacian instead. That gets punished by our opponent knocking out one of our Regielekis if I can't make them both next turn, so... it looks like they're going into Shining Arcana, which doesn't sound like the right play for me. Because I think the Mewtwo puts on the most pressure here, even if it is allowed to go down, because it's essentially like acting like a 2-prizer at that stage. It would force me to knock out Zacian with this Serena and evolve into 2 VMAX, which isn't all that easy. I am holding on to Cram and Ultra Ball, so maybe it was possible. That would have been the best defensive play they could have made. As it is, because we've had that reduction, their Gardevoir cannot reach us. So I've just been given an extra turn for essentially no reason here. And I'm going to be able to Serena their Zacian quite happily here. And get a turn attachment in on Raikou, by the looks of things. Just going to see a couple more cards with concealed cards first. Now I have the double Serena in hand, I'm definitely going to keep those. Play one this turn, have Echoing Horn Serena for next turn. This VMAX means I can take a knockout with Raikou. To hand, we have the free retreat, we have the attachments. I can see one more card with Fleet-footed. That's a pretty decent Cram target. The one thing I shouldn't do is evolve into this damaged one, because it would then allow the Mewtwo V Union to sprinkle KO with Psysplosion. I'm just going to cram the Nest Ball, because it's not a reliable card. Plus, if I hit the heads, which we do, I can just get a Forest Seal Stone I can stick to my board somewhere to protect ourselves once again from hand disruption. Because again, we haven't used this just yet. So now we've got a pretty robust board. We're going down to 2 prize cards remaining, pretty far ahead of our opponent at this stage. And we're holding on to game right now. I definitely think our opponent could have made this a lot closer, though, had they used Mewtwo V Union on the previous turn. Because in theory, as long as they're playing Sky Seal Stone, they could have won in 2 attacks there just by knocking out the Regieleki V and then Sky Seal Stone knocking out Regieleki VMAX with Zacian to end the game. As it is, though, I am going to Echoing Horn. I currently don't have game in hand, but we can conceal cards, and we actually hit off the concealed cards the Ultra Ball to get VMAX, and then I can just evolve the Regieleki that has not been knocked out all game, and we can just bring this guy up. Pretty nice. So, most of the time, it's actually a lot faster to win or lose with Miraidon. Those were some of the longest games I had today with the 2 that we've just seen. A lot of the other games I've had is either this deck really fizzling on the opening turns or just detonating on the opening turns. So we have a couple more games that really won't be all that long based on how our start goes. And this hand is looking exceptional. So this is pretty good going for us. Our opponent is playing Giratina again, actually. And they Hisuian, they get to throw away a Giratina, and then they're just going to pass with Comfey and 1 in the Lost Zone. So not a great start from them. And this is really just showing off the explosive nature of this Miraidon deck at times. When your opponent doesn't really have that stellar of a start, when your start is good, it's just so insane. Because we're holding on to Generator and we are trying to attack this turn, we can double dip the tandem unit. We do hit energy just for 1. So it's going to go to Miraidon. Then we're going to conceal cards. Now that I pick up the Switch Cart, we have the option to take another Generator here. And we could try... Yeah, and now we hit 2. So now we can actually Serena knock out their Giratina and just really fly so far ahead. Right, that's what this deck's all about, especially when there's 2 prizes lying around the board. I can even get to work on a Regieleki V on the bench. Yeah, sometimes you just have those explosive starts. That really was the nuts, right? The concealed cards got us into this Forest Seal Stone. But essentially, we are just so far ahead now. We even are holding on to Switch Cart to undo a Cram hit, which is pretty much the best thing the opponent could do this turn. Looks like they're going to rope. I can go into Greninja, so again, just kind of wasting that damage, making it really difficult for them. I think, yeah, they only had 3 in the lost zone anyway, so that's an easy enough win. Let's have one final game, which is again just showing off that this deck is really good at just preying on weak starts from other people. It is one of the biggest selling points of the deck, as the opponent is going to be playing Goodra. And I know many decks can just beat decks that kind of brick in the opening stages, so this isn't like that impressive, I suppose. But you can really just see from this deck that it takes so little to get into the game that you like completely pounce on bad hands so nicely that it's looking... it just makes the deck look really impressive. Whenever your opponent has a subpar hand, you're really just pouncing on that, because the deck can do all sorts, right? You can be really good into single prizes and multi-prizes just with your tiny selection of attackers. Now, I could actually have gone for the donk this game, where I just go for the research rip here, look for generator, look for switch outs, and win. But I'm holding on to VMAX, which I think, like, in a longer game scenario is kind of more important. And the VMAX also acts as a retreat option for me. So as long as the opponent wasn't sort of baiting and had ways to, like, Radiant Greninja, Melanie, attach, attack, take a 2-prize knockout, this looks like a much better play, where I have a much safer way of just taking a knockout here, where we have the Forest Sealstone, we had the research. I can now just go for this generator that only needs to hit 1 at this stage, and there we do get it with the Miraidon. So that is going to be it for today's video. Lots of speedy games with Miraidon. Sometimes it does fizzle, but we had a good side of luck in these games. So let me know what you're thinking about the deck down below, and I'll see you tomorrow for another video. Cheers.